What's going on, partners? Today we're going to be looking into the Center for Constitutional Rights, who is dedicated to advising and protecting the rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But is this organization actually helping, or is it just a facade? It sounds very noble, but the way that this organization has circumvented and manipulated our court system is criminal. They're actually contributing to more unhumane treatment of people inside detention centers than what they're actually protecting. This website also has a timeline of the Pelican Bay hunger strike, which began in July 1st, 2011. About a year later, the agreement to end hostilities was signed by prisoners in Pelican Bay. Despite the so-called peace treaty, prisons and jails have actually gotten a lot more dangerous. Listen to this.
Now get these. These are really going to blow your mind. How does that break down? Suicides up 85%.
Wow.
Homicides 208%. Drug or alcohol intoxication related deaths up 611%.
Holy shit.
Exactly. So the rate of homicide in state prison is 2.5 times greater than the overall U.S. population. You are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered in prison than you are out here on the street. And then this one really shocked me. The homicide rate was highest for incarcerated people age 55 and older. You are twice as likely to die by homicide in prison if you are over 55 than the 25 to 44 age group. Those are real stats.
That's insane.
Now, to be transparent, these statistics are from the state of Texas. Our nation's detention centers are in a crisis, and no one is talking about it, and the news will not report on it. The media refuses to report on it. They paint a whole different perspective that there is actual rehabilitation happening inside detention centers instead of reporting on all the deaths and injustices that are happening to these prisoners. The agencies themselves are pushing their own rehabilitation programs that are not working and are not accepting that the work environment inside detention centers is becoming a lot more dangerous for the correctional officers and deputies that work inside of them. Look at all the deaths in LA County in 2024. Over 30 deaths in 2024. We're only 6 weeks into 2025 and we already had 9 deaths in LA County. In Riverside County, nearly 250 people have died in custody since 2011. Now let me ask you this. If the hunger strike was supposed to bring unity and peace amongst the races inside prisons and jails, why are deaths up in Riverside County 133% since 2011? Because that hunger strike was never intended to bring unity amongst the inmates. Despite the first sentence on point 2 stating, therefore, beginning on October 10th, 2012, all hostilities between our racial groups in the SHU, ADSEC, general population, and county jails will officially cease. Yet violence and death has been rampant in our detention centers. And I believe that all this has to do with ideologies that are being pushed, like the one Jack Morris is about to tell us here.
I accept the fact that you asked those things, but the question is not that what you asked. Mm-hmm. It's asked today. I was literally on a Zoom meeting the other day where they were talking about sending in what they call credible messengers, meaning people from the streets or people that have been in the joints and stuff that have gotten out to the streets and have some kind of clout surrounding them, where a young kid that is involved in this path of existence and that's new to it could look at one of these people and say, wow, he's telling me not to do this. Okay, so they're talking about these people on the Zoom. Oh, we're going to bring them into these county juvenile facilities. But they're talking about drugs. And they're saying these young kids are dying in these institutions from taking fentanyl. And we got to figure out how they're bringing it in. It's either going to be them or their parents or their guards, or we need to get drug dogs in there, and you know, they're probably, we should stop having their families bring in food and shit like that. That's bullshit. The question should be asked, how are we treating them for drug use? Not how do we stop them from getting drugs? If you treat them and convince them through drug deviation and harm reduction, they no longer use drugs. You don't need no damn dog to sniff out whether they have drugs. The problem is the questions being asked. They don't lead to a solution to the problem. So don't ask, how do you get them? Ask them, how can I treat you? Ask yourself, how can I treat this young man so he don't want to smoke marijuana, so he don't want to take fentanyl pills, so he don't want to sling drugs on the yard? You know what I mean? That's the question to ask. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have the revolving door of civilization impact the communities that are growing up.
That's wild. I've never even thought about it. Fuck, Jack.
I'm telling you.
I've never thought about it in that perspective, like at all. Like at all. Like you never. And it's.
All right, he just blew these youngsters' minds away. Like, oh, wow, you're such a genius. We're asking the wrong questions. But look at our jails. Look at our detention centers. That idea is what we have been doing for the last several years, and it has not been working. The problem with that, Mr. Morris, is that you can't force someone into rehabilitation. They need to make that decision on their own. They're going to want to get themselves clean. Now, essentially, what he is explaining is defunding the police, taking tools away from the police, don't have a drug dog in a jail, don't worry about how the drugs come in, worry about rehabilitating them. But trust me when I'm telling you that these guys are locked in detention centers and they don't want the rehabilitation. Instead, they just want their Suboxone. They want their next high. Give me my Suboxone now. We're just prescribing them and getting them addicted to a different type of drug. What Mr. Morris describes is the reason that we have a rotating door in our detention centers and we're at a crisis. Instead of us having the ability to prevent drugs from coming into our facilities, instead, we're just asked to provide Narcan for them. Let them overdose in our facilities and shoot them up with Narcan. The pharmaceuticals just want to prescribe the inmates with medication, whether it's for medical reasons like hypertension, diabetes. They want to prescribe medication for addiction. They're mandating every staff member in detention facilities to carry Narcan. And on the criminal side, Mr. Morris is saying, just let all the drugs in. Don't worry about stopping them. Worry about rehabilitation. But if they don't want the rehabilitation, they just want the drugs that are coming in, what are they going to take? Now, by us allowing the drugs to come in, it fuels the criminal organization inside detention centers. And if you don't believe me, here's Hector Bravo and Rene Enriquez to sum it all up.
So you talked about litigation, and one of those was Asker versus Brown. Right? Asker versus Brown was a class action lawsuit brought by inmates at Pelican Bay requesting alterations in the way the CDC did things, particularly in indeterminate shoot terms. As a result of that litigation, the shoes were literally closed. Pelican Bay is no longer, not as a shoe.
Facts.
Corcoran shoe is no longer.
Facts.
Do you think that became beneficial to the CDC or it became a detriment to the CDC?
Again, I don't feel, and I have no problem going on record, man. The shoe did not work, right? The security housing unit, indeterminate shoes, locking up the worst of the worst did not work. And if you're saying, how did it not work? Well, it sure didn't stop the violence on the yards, man. Centinela, Charlie Yard, level 4 GP, Bravo Yard, level 3. You still had your race riots, you still had your murders. And that's with the heavy hitters locked up in the shoe. But it almost like, dude, if CDCR could have done it the wrong way, they did it the wrong way. I mean, what did they do? They dispersed everybody to every main line. I made a suggestion the other day. They should have probably just put every leader on one yard or in one prison. And give them the GP access, day room, yard, programs. But I think since they spread the problem.
Spread the cancer.
Not the problem. They spread a problem around.
So In 1 year, 62 murders.
2 years, 62 murders since Jeff McCumber, the secretary, has been, since I left. 62 murders.
62 murders in the CDCR.
62.
Proliferation of cell phones everywhere.
Cell phones, okay. 95% of inmates probably have a cell phone. It's safe to say every inmate probably has a cell phone, and or definitely.
Geez, 95% of inmates all have a cell phone. But we're going to stop it right there because cell phones and communication, that's going to be a topic for a completely different video. Look, partners, these guys are talking about things that I already put out. They're talking about Todd Ashker and the lawsuit. I talked about it in this video and how it led to Proposition 47. They also talk about how the shoot did not stop the violence, which I talked about in this video exposing California's agreement to end hostilities. I further added that the agreement to end hostilities is a facade and it also did not reduce or stop the violence among races in prisons or in jails. With that being said, please like and subscribe. That is all I got. Remember to hold the line and let's hold them accountable.